That's what I was thinking too, probably. I was thinking probably is C.S. Joseph. But what's interesting is, whereas, C.S. Joseph's in the running for both most hated and least, I guess you'd say, legit. But I would say I'm also in the running for most hated. But, of course, I'm not in the running for least legit. I would tend to agree with C.S. Joseph. And I think that to a certain extent you reap what you sow, but not always. So it's like I reap some of what I sow, some of what I reap I don't sow, I mean, there are certainly people who hate me a lot, but I suspect the kind of people who don't like C.S. Joseph don't bother trying to troll him very much, whereas the kind of people who don't like me get direct their entire lives to hating me or whatever. Well, yeah, I mean, look, all relying on you presume that I'm going to say the answer is me. I think the answer is also C.S. Joseph. I don't think the answer is me. That's not why I asked the question. But because I was going to phrase it, which typologist needs the most help? I thought it was a more real question to say, who gets the most hate? I think C.S. Joseph probably does receive the most general broad criticism, but I think much or most of that is legitimate, so it doesn't really qualify as hate, So I think DSP is not disliked, generally speaking. Certainly Benjamin is not disliked. Benjamin is sort of a OP lackey, I guess. I would prefer to choose a better term than that, but I didn't. How was my day? Well, I mean, it's not really legitimate to hate, right? Well, he doesn't do typings, but I'd call him a fixture in the typological community, I guess. It's interesting. Benjamin has. Oh, whatever. I don't want to get sidetracked. I mean, to the extent that somebody is going to, hate's the wrong word, right? To the extent that somebody's going to be angered by a person, it's legitimate to be angered by C.S. Joseph. He stole my clout. Oh, yeah, that's right. Ay. You gotta learn. Sometimes things don't get framed through FE like that. It's just it doesn't work like that. He had way more people from the get-go than me. It's not like there was a time when C.S. Joseph and I were the same size. He was always bigger than me. So the other thing, as far as clout goes, I mean, the question of legitimacy comes first, right? So the problem is what he's saying is not legitimate. It's not predicated on legitimate ideas. He's not doing any of the due diligence that would be required of somebody who's going to try to charge a lot of money for their services. And the due diligence in this case is the TI legwork, which he absolutely refuses to do any of. So that makes him a charlatan, you know. Yeah, I was working on my photo album archiving project. I found this little book. I'll show it to you. It's called Snapfolio. And it's got pictures of my mom when she was like 9 months old. I mean, yeah, I would suggest that Cloud probably is still here fairly frequently, but probably not quite as often as he used to be. He obviously is not here as Cloud because I've had to ban that account. And when he acts like Cloud, I never really have any way of knowing if it's him or not. You know, it could be somebody else. But I would guess probably he comes around still under different names. I've noticed a persistence in people who want to stick it to me. You know, there's persistence there, surprising persistence. I mean, talk about misunderstanding the nature of cognitive functions. They aren't things you have in that fashion. They're angles of a teeter-totter. Okay? So he's trying to say, no. This teeter-totter only has up. No, it doesn't work like that. That's not a universe in which sane things happen, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, if you want to make bold claims, then you have a responsibility to face bold scrutiny, you know? And if you're not willing to do that, that comprises evil if you're then making a lot of money off of your purported expertise, right? Because you don't have any real expertise. And the thing, it's not like, okay, well, is it wrong for a tarot reader to make a lot of money reading tarot? No, but it's wrong for a medical doctor to make money off of somebody using tarot cards, claiming to cure their illness. It's wrong for a psychologist or a psychiatrist to make diagnoses or attempt therapy using tarot cards. And it's wrong for a typologist to type people using tarot cards, right? Because he is in agreement with me that what he's talking about is something that actually is more real than astrology, that's more real than tarot and stuff in a clinical deliberative sense, right? So if he's in agreement with that, which I believe he is, then he needs to act like it or else step back from this arena, realize, oh, since I don't have any wings, I shouldn't enter the flying contest with the birds. You know? But that's the inherent Dunning-Kruger of polar, right? If you're polar and I, it's, you know, there's no fixing it. It's like when Brittany, for years, this is she was an ENTP, and I kept telling her an ESFP, you're an ESFP. It didn't matter what my arguments were. It didn't matter what the evidence was. It didn't matter anything. She persisted in her belief. Now, C.S. Joseph is also persistent in his belief, but for a different reason. So, Brittany persisted in her belief because it was what she wanted to be true. She's using a tool function, F5. C.S. Joseph is persistent in his belief because it validates for him on TE grounds. In other words, this sure is useful to me, so it must be good. That's called an executor. The thing is, I do think it's important to distinguish between strength of hate and breadth of hate. Okay, so I think I get very strong hate, but I don't think I get anywhere close to the breadth of hate that C.S. Joseph gets, because smart people dislike what he's doing, but are not really likely to hate on him that much. Just like they talk shit like this, you know. It's like, I'm not gonna waste my time on his channel, right? But so, you know, smart people are in general less likely to do stupid shit like be a spite monkey for a long time, or be Ashadeep, or whatever, you know. And dumb people are probably less likely to find C.S. Joseph offensive. So, how does FI serve the goal of achieving SE in the case of the ESFP, especially if they want something like B and ENTP to be true? Well, I mean, the key thing to remember is that because of the cognitive function stack of the ESFP, they impact the world primarily through FE. In other words, if they can convince everybody to perceive them as they think that they want to be perceived, then they feel as though they've done their necessary work in the world. You know, like if I manage to make things useful, then I've done my necessary work in the world. But the thing is, this context enables me to do my necessary work in the world pretty easily. If I can successfully explain this in a way that helps people understand better, I've done some utility, right? I've performed some useful service, presumably. But for an ESFP, when they enter into typology, they're thinking, okay, I am deciding an identity. It's almost aspirational. Like when asked who they are, they tell you what they want to be, and I think it persists in the face of endless amounts of contrary evidence. Now, I don't think C.S. Joseph is an ESFP, because I don't think his FI would be able to stand ultimately. It's like FI tool alone doesn't really justify what he's doing. TE DOM doesn't need to justify it if they're followed up with SI. They just kind of go, well, you know what? Practicalities first. He probably doesn't care what people say about him on the internet, you know? I don't really care. Your 6-slot function is by far the most conscious of your backslot functions, although what really it is you have an awareness of what others expect from you and varying degrees of capability of providing that. But you also have an awareness, you have an expectation of yourself to meet those needs. You say, okay, here's where I should be able to provide for people, at least this, or else I'm not going to be useful. So Genexial needs to be able to provide examples in order to convey information to people. That's demonstrative SI. He needs to remember what he's learned before and use it, because he's not going into a problem equipped with expert intuition to just come up with random shit to try. So he needs to be solid on his demonstrative SI. I doubt it. Like the third slot is your scorecard for yourself. So when I'm using FE, I'm using it in a very selfish fashion. I'm saying, I'm making sure that I'm perceived well. I'm not really caring about whether or not I'm making you look good or bad. And I'm not really caring about making sure I afford a fair amount of attention to what you're wanting to talk about and what you want to show me and what you want to say and whatever. It's pretty selfish. It's like, I want to be liked and I want to be on stage talking. As is my TE. My 6 slot TE is the thing. The term critical parent is not a bad term for 6 slot, because I literally say this to myself whenever I fail on my 6 slot TE. Eric, you stupid fucking idiot. When I do something incredibly TE dumb, which I do fairly often, like trying to carry like 6 things in your hands at one time and then trying to open something and going like, what's wrong? What you fucking stupid Eric? Put your shit down. That's demonstrative FI. That's a good way to put that. You're not going to pretend to be something you're not. An ESFP might say to you, talking to people, no, you don't. Now, I think everyone feels susceptible to being critiqued in certain areas, and it's primarily 4 and 6. 8, you get really fighty and territorial about. 7, you don't get it. You're just confused. You're subject to being attacked successfully with you knowing you've been attacked successfully on the 4th and 6th. And you're better at providing examples of 6 than 4. But I think this may change a bit for, like, for example, let's just follow as SE DOM. That's a physical impact function that links very nicely to TE6. I think he probably has a better relationship with his TE than I do with mine. I totally understand, yeah. I mean, mine is about certain things, right? So it's like, these little photo album videos I'm making are showing good TE in terms of using my apps and shit. So when I realized that, okay, this is what this project is going to be doing, then I set up some new keyboard commands in GIMP, so I could quickly crop and rotate and do shit like that without having to go to the menus. I, on the one hand, it's terrible TE because I've been using this app for fucking years. I've never set up the keyboard commands before. But on the other hand, it's good TE this time because the project demanded it. It was just so laborious to not have the keyboard commands that I had to set them up, And I also learned how to use AutoDuck for the first time. It's like, okay, Eric, stop being a fuck around and learn things and stop just trying to do it your way all the time like an idiot. But hi, Peter. Yeah. There you go, big guy. He's right there. It's luxuriant. Game's coming on in about an hour. Go. I'll be in there. So like I have both good TE and bad TE. In other words, here's Well, you can't, Skygear. This is the problem. This is the fucking problem. Because, why? Interface knowledge types function differently than deliberation action types. What's interesting, another thing I just sort of realized was, the interface knowledge types are all the judgers in MBTI, and the action deliberation types are the receivers in MBTI. So, yeah, okay. Well, we do have to split it into two cases, I think. But I think it may even be harder than that. Genexial has this picture I have that shows how the functions operate on the different fields. So basically, the answer's in there somewhere in that picture. It's like if you were to lay out each type on that thing in the right visual thing, you'd see what the pattern is. I'm not sure what it is, though, because I don't visualize well, and I've only drawn out one type. I've drawn out for ISTP, that's it. And then I drew out for the functions, right? But it's like somehow it's, if you've got if you've got two things on this field and three things on this field or whatever, then right? It's like that kind of shit. And the thing being, of course, the other factor that has to be factored in is agential, subject, and object. Agential being observational frame of reference, subject being action taking or public self frame of reference, and object being action receiving frame of reference. So the problem with talking about slots is that a knowledge function has, depending on which, like say NI, right? It's a receiving function. It's receiving on both metaphysical planes. When it's in the first slot, then it's going to behave as a knowledge function in the first slot, receiving on both metaphysical planes. And like, let's say it's in the fifth slot. It's still the same function, but it's like people's relationship to it changes. So it's hard to describe exactly. You can come up with. I really enjoyed Legends Fall's comment right at the end of the last live stream when he said, when we were comparing about our relationships with SI, I was saying how to a certain extent some of your fears can be summed up in your fourth slot. My sort of biggest ontological fear is losing my past. And Legends Fall noted that he has an equivalent concern about his future not being as good as his past. I thought that was a very insightful. I appreciated his mentioning that because I'm not an ESP, so I don't know what it's like. But that makes a lot of sense and shows the difference between an absolute value that you need to uphold, like fifth slot NI truth or SI past, versus an instrumental value that you need to exercise more of, right? NI fourth or SI fourth. I mean, if I'm an ESTP Ron Allen Salon, the problem with that notion, people have said this plenty of times before, but there's a definite problem with it. If I'm an ESTP, show me any ENTP. And you can't. Well, what I mean by biggest fear is if I wake up in the middle of the night with a sense of, which I used to occasionally, it was about that. It was about, when I'm playing the day away, lost in my extroverted intuition, I am letting important things that are important to me. This is an F5 fear as well, I guess. But I'm not attending to, I'm not giving my attention to things that have transience to them, right? But it may be the case, Skygear, that I'm actually expressing an FI fear, and I'm conflating with SI. Regardless, these sort of general statements are not meant to be determinate. Okay, I'm not making. In other words, we're talking about affect, common displays or common manifestations of something. We're not talking about the mechanical process, right? We're talking about how it looks on a subject, or how, in this instance, I guess it would be how each individual as an agent themselves perceives themselves. Is this, in fact, representative of a pattern that we can generalize? Only correlatively, not mechanically. And I don't know if we can correlatively, but that just because something's correlatively establishable doesn't mean it's absolutely worthless. It just means it's not determined as an argument in making a case. I mean, I'm not sure if other people have that same experience as I do of occasionally waking up with what I call ontological terror. Maybe it's fairly unique to me. I'm not really sure. Is typology based on life experience? Typology, correctly understood, originates in some basic observations about the human experience. So it's grounded in the idea that we have four frames in which we pay attention: internal physical, external physical, internal metaphysical, external metaphysical. Right here, this is the external metaphysical field. We sit with that observation for a long time. So if this is the first time you've heard that observation, you sit with it for a long time and you try to disprove it. You try to think of other fields upon which people can pay attention, or ways in which those fields that I've named are not distinct. And if you can't, then you accept those four fields as axiomatic. So are you with me so far? Well, look, maybe fear is not exactly the right word. But I would say, everybody has some part of reality that they find inherently dreadful because they feel helpless before it, and they may have more than one. Some of those may be derived from cognitive functions. Some of those may be derived from life experience. So in other words, this is not necessarily a cognitive function matter. I agree with you, but I think it may have some link to it. As far as insecurities go, I typically have referred to the 8th slot as the insecurity slot because that's where you feel you have just the right amount, managed just balanced as you want it balanced, and you don't want anybody fucking with it, and you don't like it's like I think that in general, what I've extrapolated from my own experience regarding the 8th has validated when I'm typing other people and stuff, which is that there's at least a correlation between your 8th slot function and the evil that offends you. So President Falls pointed it out to me on a few occasions, like my outrage at health shit, like body image stuff, like being you have to stay fit or you're not good enough or something like that. I don't like that shit at all. Okay, well, the SI is your conscious insecurity function. You're not really insecure about it. You're self-deprecating. So the thing is, things that you are genuinely insecure about are things that you have trouble self-deprecating about. You're not necessarily the best at, but it's important to you that you not be criticized there. I don't worry about being criticized in SI. I expect it to a certain extent. If I'm going to criticize myself, or if I'm going to concede something to the rest of the world so that I'm being fair, I'll say, look, I'm bad at this kind of stuff. I need help with this kind of stuff. I'm willing to concede those points about my fourth slot function. So it's not really an insecurity. It's rather a differential one. It's the function that you'd like to delegate to other people. No. If you're doing exercise and stuff to be healthy, that's fine. That's SI, fine. But if you're doing it to be sexy, that's more SE. So yeah, I guess it depends why you're doing the exercise. If you're going to the gym to be fit and to be seen and stuff, and if you judge fat people, that's SE. Well, look, it's the fourth slot function is an area where people can make you scramble. So in that sense, I guess you'd say you're somewhat insecure about it. In other words, when people critique you on it, you assume they're right. But the thing is, the eighth slot function is where you're more likely to fight and make a stand and say, no, where you're also, you feel like you're doing it right, but other people are doing it better. If that makes any sense at all. I hate it when people say that, but in this instance, I'm going to say that. Do you guys experience this as well? I don't like it when people add, if that makes any sense, after what they say. No, F5 people like to be sexy too, Skygear. In fact, they're probably... FE doesn't want to be unsexy. FI wants to be sexy. FE might want to be sexy, I guess, but the point is, Rachel's FE tool function, and it's also the case, just realistically, that she's put on a fair amount of weight, over the course of the past whatever. That doesn't mean she exercises to get it off, I really think the types that are most likely to exercise are types that have either SE6 or SE3. Just like the types that are most likely to display extroverted feeling are FE third or FE sixth. I mean, who displays the most extroverted feeling of all? ESFPs. They display it almost continually. But of course, that has something to do with the environment. See, this environment doesn't afford them any way to legitimately engage in anything except their critical parent function. No, it's terrible, FE, but it's very active. It would be like if I went to a job site where I really wasn't competent in doing the shit that I was supposed to be doing, right? I'd be vigorously trying to display TE all the time so everyone knows that I'm useful too, right? Of course, my TE is not very good, so people who are actually good TE would go like, what is this fucker doing? Okay, why are you nailing those two boards together? Just doing the important fixing. You think it's effective for them? Well, I've hypothesized in the past that it's effective on everybody except intuitives. After all, Trump got elected just with that fucking incredibly shitty demonstrative FE. I'm a very stable genius. The thing is, you can kind of get why somebody might be tempted to say, "Oh, well, you have an ESFP self, Eric, in 4 sides of the mind, right?" And that is manifest because both you, Eric, and an ESFP might say out loud, "I'm a very stable genius." Of course, my point would be, yes, but only one of us would be correct. And they say, "Well, see, that's shitty FE, Eric. That's really shitty FE." Well, I don't mean reputations and status exactly. That's part of it. But I'm saying that when people use extroverted feeling, they are paying attention to how others are perceiving them, how second and third parties are perceiving each other, how they're reading the room. You know, that's probably the best shorthand description of the process of FE is reading the room. So by TE, I mean TE is very different. Extroverted thinking is both FE and extroverted thinking. Extroverted feeling and extroverted thinking are both. We don't disagree around Alan Salon. Okay, let me make this clear. We don't disagree for the same reason that when you're in calculus class and you get a problem wrong, you and the teacher aren't in a disagreement. You just haven't learned it yet. So extroverted thinking is a process by which people deal with dynamic non-social systems. And FE is a process by which people deal with dynamic social systems. If we want to avoid dealing with dynamic systems, then we have to we're perfectly capable of getting away with just action and deliberation. So in other words, if I don't care at all regarding your impression of me, I can simply be right and hammer you, right? But if that's going to make everybody dislike me, then it's a poor choice on my part. So in that regard, my third slot FE is a constraint on my tool function, TI. Or you could look at it more positively and say that when one matures, one learns to weave together the sometimes conflicting frames of reference of your second and third slot function. Because the thing is, I would like just my being intelligent to be enough to convince people to like me or afford me FE credit in some sense, competence, legitimacy, whatever. But that's not enough. And it's not enough because ultimately, what I found works better than anything else is just being an authentic, actual human being, first and foremost, and talking to people as though they are as well, you know? It's, I think that there's this kind of like, this is a unique community because we don't embrace the expert, not expert divide that I just exemplified with my calculus analogy. Okay. We don't embrace that divide. We encourage everybody to make their own determinations about things using their own deliberative processes. However, there are reasonable limits to that. In other words, I think all of the world would be a better place if the following thing would occur. everybody were to learn about Dunning-Kruger and search for examples of it in their own life. I think that's a fair request of the world. Isn't FE also knowing how and what actions affect other people for better or worse in general? I think what you're referencing is TI. So, not FE. What I mean by that is, let's see, TE says we need to build a road, and there's some natives who are living there who are savages. Well, why don't we just forcibly relocate them out of the way of the road because we need to get the road through? That's TE. FI is seeing one of those people being dislocated and throwing a big fit about it because it hurts your feelings to see this painful thing. TI is saying you're not adhering to a limiting principle, and that makes you wicked and evil because you don't have adequate justifications for your behavior. In other words, getting the freeway done is not an adequate justification for forcibly relocating these people. You can go around them for fuck's sake. So, in other words, FI and TI are going to probably agree here. TE and FE are more likely to agree as well. Hey, look, the common good here is these 50 savages don't matter in the face of these 100 million people who benefit from this. That's FE. TE is these savages aren't part of the problem we're solving. They're not part of the existing frame of reference, which is getting this freeway done the best possible way. Going around the savages makes us have to have an inferior freeway forever. It's a stupid idea. Just move them. They are temporary. The freeway's forever, right? I mean, basically, if FE is also knowing what I can do to get a certain emotional reaction from something, yeah, that's true too. Like, knowing what's going to hurt and knowing how to burn and shit like that, those are FE matters for sure. But, FE plays out in a number of ways. It plays out like if you have any NI and FE, it tends to play out as framing things through people's motivations. Like that's why maybe it correlates with conspiratorial thinking more frequently, which is, keep in mind, I am not saying, I do not want to do what people have done with the words conspiracy theory, which is create a class of invalid kind of things on just by labeling them conspiracy theories. Of course, people do sometimes conspire. And when they conspire, sometimes they conspire to do wicked things, right? And successfully accomplish them even. Get away with it. And sometimes we may have a really good intuition that they're getting away with it, but I know you did it. But that's not the same thing as actually knowing that they did it. So, functions that one admires in himself or herself or in others. Well, I think everybody admires or is able to incorporate others' good instances of their own dominant function. So if somebody's got a good idea, I guess maybe that might be NI. I don't know. I guess that'd be more like the NI I'd incorporate. I'm happy to incorporate NI. If somebody shoots out a good idea, I'll incorporate it. But I don't want to have somebody else brainstorm for me, really, Although I'm perfectly capable of listening to somebody brainstorm and pick out if there is any good ideas. So in that regard, I guess you can always find utility with your own dominant function. and you don't mind other people using it. Tool function, you expect other people to use it, and you're unhappy when they don't. It's like, I'm trying to do work in the world. For me to do work in the world, it requires that you also concede that TI is the predominant, determinate frame of reference that everything should be evaluated through. And when you refuse to talk using TI, I get frustrated. So that's how TI operates for me in the second slide, Yeah, OPS. I think the distinction should be shadow and light. How about shadow and light? Oh, dude, those are actually poetic. As the ISFP CIA, it depends on the context in the sense that 8-slot function, your 8-slot function is as hardworking as your dominant function is slave driving. So if in fact your dominant function requires, in other words, in order to manifest itself in the world using your dominant function, it requires you to provide a lot of 8th function, you will. But it's not something you have really conscious decision making over exactly. How suppressed can an ego be? What does that mean to have a suppressed ego? Thanks, Legends Paul. I like you. You and I agree a lot. I like agreeing. I don't try to be disagreeable with people. I don't like getting arguments all the time. I mean, I agree. Like everything, like everything real in the world, it gets subsumed into an FE argument, right? Every legitimate critique will get co-opted as just an FE technique. So that's just unavoidable. But it doesn't change the fact that some of them are legitimate, some of them are not. Like Eckhart Tolle is a complete idiot. I don't know how else to put it. Is that too harsh? Okay. He's just a regular idiot. He's not a complete idiot. I still want to know what Benjamin meant by a suppressed ego. Anybody else know what a suppressed ego is? Anybody else want to explain it? I see. Objective person. Did an angel come to you in a dream and say, "Go troll Eric. He's an idiot"? Is that what made you think this is a good idea? The quiet ego refers to a self-identity that transcends egoism, or as a defense mechanism. What's the quiet ego? You're talking about agent, subject, object? Like agent is the private or agential, or what you might call prelocutionary or illocutionary part. Subject is the self that expresses in the world. Object is the self that has action taken upon it when that happens. So is that what you mean? I have no idea what you mean. I mean, can somebody explain it? Does that mean having to read something? With you, got no ego, that's kind of fine because that's your own decision. Suppressed ego is more like an unsure ego, I think. Do you think I'm asleep? Is there anything about me that appears like I'm sleeping? Are my eyes closed? Am I silent? Am I breathing steadily and deeply? Am I not smoking because I'm asleep? Oh, you mean metaphorically waking me. Okay. Suppression is a defense mechanism, and specifically the ego will have to mobilize extremely psychotic defense mechanisms. I don't know what that means. Like, I get what psychotic state looks like, and that people can enter into a psychotic, they can have a psychotic break and enter into a psychotic state. But I don't understand what the link is between this supposed suppression mechanism. Like, how do they define the processes of suppression? How is suppression done? Or is it simply a description of a phenomenon observed without any explanation? That's not. Yeah, I agree on objective personality. I agree that C.S. Joseph is probably the most hated. But as I was talking about before, C.S. Joseph I think has broad but shallow hate. I think I have narrow but deep hate directed at me. No, you're sleep blast. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Well, I am planning on entering my spiritual chrysalis pretty soon, objective personality. I do plan to emerge a spiritual butterfly. So maybe then I'll be on a higher tier. Maybe I'll get a black belt in spirituality. Is a substitute formation of sorts? What does that mean? No, I'm a spiritual caterpillar, okay, Darkwing Pegasus? You just have to wait for me to grow into a beautiful, beautiful butterfly. Well, you can hire me to type you for $100 if you'd like. You can email me. I'm going to watch the game with my dad in not a super long time. That's amazing, objective personality. Hey, everybody, we know he's right. His wife agrees with him. I mean, he must be right. His wife vouches for him. You talking to me? Like his gaming? Like Chris Gaming? No thanks. I've got better things to do. Just fucking around here is better than doing that. I don't need to see more people getting shit wrong. Oh, yeah, well. Unobjective personality and objective personality are both the same troll. So don't be suckered in by them. If anybody thinks they can type somebody definitively at all, without asking them follow-up questions and pulling and pushing in an actual back and forth conversation, they're fucking crazy. It's that simple. It's like, you know, it's basically like these people they make this Star Trek like tell you what's wrong with you thing. I forget, transcorder or whatever it's called. Which just has these flashing lights. And it goes, look, see, I'm pulling up here, it's green, pulling up here, it's yellow. See, it's working, it's consistent. And then it's like, yeah, but consistent with what? It's just consistent with the fact that you made it so that the light changes color when you go up and down. And that doesn't mean anything. No, not longer than 30 minutes videos. One should type people by actually asking them questions, hearing their answers, and following up based on what they say, trying to find, actual examples or evidence of real processes occurring. I mean, I don't find it humorous. I find it offensive. Okay, Oliver Line. That's fine. They're different rules. Boy, oh boy. Well, how do they test TI? Well, one of the aspects of the TI process is the process of replacing your understanding of the thing the symbol represents with a variable symbol. Okay? So in other words, replacing the statement, I have tomatoes, with P. The genealogy questions require you to do that kind of relational attention that ignores your actual understanding of the meaning of the person. So if I say, who is my mother's husband's only sister's husband's son's mother's only brother's wife's mother in relation to me, you need to not be thinking about what those words mean, but how they as symbols relate to each other positionally. And so good TI will require you to go back and forth. In other words, another way to test the same concept a little bit is to say there are 30 fardangles in a 4-yard, and there are 6 crabs in 2 4-yards. How many fardangles are there in 2 crabs? And the thing is, people don't, they're not units that people are normally used to measuring. So for example, if you use a verb there or something, there are 2 runnings in 1 swimming, and there are 4 swimmings in 1 hiking. How many runnings are there in a hiking? People go, what? If you go, there's 1 A and there are 2 A's and 1 B, or something like that. How do NI and TI answer TI questions differently? Well, one can intuit the answer to things from a number of different cues. So let's say you've picked up on a habit of a teacher who's making tests, and you've noticed that every time they include an E, none of the above or all of the above, it's that one. You've noticed that pattern. And then one day in class, you overhear some other kids talking about it. And because your FE tool, you notice and suspect that the teacher also overheard them talking about it. And on the next test, there's a question that has an E. All of the above, none of the above. And you have no idea what the answer to the question is. But you intuit it's not E this time because she overheard them and she switched it up. So let's say that's an example of you NI knowing it's not at that this time for reasons unrelated to your knowledge of the subject matter, right? As an FE NI knowing. You've read the teacher, read the room, read the situation, and have intuited that the teacher is, you've intuited what the teacher's going to be thinking and what the teacher's going to be doing as a consequence. If you don't like to take the shit, why try it from a bunch of different animals hoping to find shit that actually tastes quite delicious? That's politics. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. What you just said right there, 605. So, okay, a cognitive function is a way you deal with the world. Well, it's a way of being or a way of paying attention. Because it's not necessarily a way of you dealing with the world. For example, if you get a stomach ache, that's not really a way of you dealing with the world. It's something that's happened to you. So it's a way of being or a way of paying attention. But I guess deal with the world is fairly broad too. A function slot denotes when and why you use the cognitive function. That's true. There are 4 fields: external, internal, physical, metaphysical, and possibly agential, but I honestly don't know what that is exactly or what agents actually do and why we have it. Okay, so let me explain a little bit of that. No, there's also interface. They can also interface. An interface function, it puts and gets. It doesn't really receive. It's always paired with a receive function. So the thing is, interface functions, it's my theory, my current hypothesis is that interface knowledge types have less flexibility in terms of using their dominant function not in conjunction with their tool function. So it's like, because interface requires interface is inherently interactive, right? So the reason it's paired with a knowledge function is because you can't know in advance. You can't put together a game plan in advance to win the whole thing. It's going to be fluid and changing. It's going to be responsive to you. It's an open system. So as a consequence, you have to know on the fly. You don't have time to deliberate out plays in between. It's like a real-time sports game. You don't have time to stop at the 3-point line and go, okay, let me check. Is this an appropriate time for me to shoot the ball? I have nobody around me. Okay, check. Nobody coming up behind to block it. Good. All right, fine. The clock looks good. If I shoot now, we can get a 2-for-1 at the end of the quarter. Good, I'll shoot it. You can't do that. You have to know, shoot, right? So, okay, I will go back to the agential field. So the thing is this. The knowledge functions and the deliberation functions represent agential functions in the sense that they are introverted and they are not necessarily made public or intended to be public. They're part of your epistemology, okay? Your epistemology functions, your knowledge, and your deliberation functions. So here's the thing. When we talk about functions, we typically talk about how you use them. This breaks down when we talk about receive functions. Because when we're talking about using something, we're talking about taking action with it. And receive functions are not action functions. They are being in a state of readiness to receive. Now, NI is much more of a receive function, a pure receive function than SI is. SI and NI are quite distinct in their ways of knowing, and they make for quite distinct people. But the point is that if we're talking about slot mechanics, so let's say I say the first slot is my spigot. I pour too much of that out all the time. Well, that's a metaphor that's skewed towards action types, because you don't have a spigot of NI pouring out. You have a bucket of NI waiting to catch, right? And then the other reason why the agential thing is important is because agent, subject, object is because action and interface functions are both subject functions. And the object half of it is in the interfacing part and in the subjective part of the epistemology. So the TEFE and then FI, SI. Those things represent your object functions. But TE and FE also represent subject functions. NE and SE represent subject functions. And then NI and TI represent almost exclusively agent functions. Now, the thing is, TI is because of this fact, and necessarily so, TI is extremely renderable into a subject capacity. So TI works just fine as a subject, but it's agent subject, right? Whereas FI is agent object. So there's a difference between the, like, you see what I'm saying? Okay, well, look. So start with that one. TI is agent subject, and FI is agent object. And NI is agent object, I would say. I mean, this is the thing is I haven't figured out all the specifics of it, but it's relevant because it links to which fields they're on, right? So it's why we don't need to explain aspects. In other words, instead of saying that the reason I use TE the way I use, because I'm using the metaphysical aspect of it, instead we can explain that by pointing out that it's an interface function that functions as a subject and an object function. Or actually, I guess TE might be, I'm not exactly sure, but we'd say, okay, it's an agent and a subject function. And so as a consequence, because I have it in the 6th slot, I use it as subject, but not as agent. Okay? You see, I know I'm doing a terrible job right now of explaining this, because I don't have it all figured out in my head yet. But the point is, this is a way to resolve both aspects and some dimensionality style observations that socionics has made that doesn't add anything to complicate it really more. It's just a simple observation regarding the fact that that we're typically limited in our understanding of things because language only expresses a distinction, English anyway, only expresses a distinction between subject and object. And the only distinction to be made between subject and agent is in the pronoun usage. Namely, first person is agent and third person is subject. But the problem is, if I say I watched a squirrel run up the tree, it's really agent, subject, object. Agent, watching. I'm observing. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything. If we don't make a distinction between observing and action, then we're not observing and action or deliberation or interface. Then we're not being real about the full scope of reality, right? So the answer is somewhere in there. As usual, I'm a bit of a mess. You do a better job of figuring out where the things are in there than me, really, I think. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying, that I can explain why my TE manifests the way it does simply by talking about things inherent to the function in the slot without having to add an additional element called aspect or something by simply pointing out that there's a third grammatical that's not included in the language normally. This is not the aquarium. This is a TV. This is a TV. The aquarium's over there. I'm just looking over here. I'm looking at myself. I'm talking to myself. Yes, I know the camera's pointing inside view. I said it first. Switch it, change it up. Change pace today. Exciting new adventure. No, okay. So, yeah, the point about NINTI being agent or is that I would say all of the introverted functions are agent. NI, SI, FI, and TI. But some of them are agent object and some of them are agent subject. I gotta go because I gotta watch this this basketball game. But I do want to say before I go, why doesn't anybody comment on my 1986 video? It's got 107 views, 15
in 1986,
115 views now, 15 thumbs up, and 0 comments. How sad is that? I'm so sad. But what I want to share with you before I go is this exciting coolness. I'll be making a video out of these pictures pretty soon, but I want to share them with you all because they're so cool. Okay, you're living in the future, buddy. You're living in the future. I checked it, didn't seem to be disabled. These are photos of my mom, 1938. Black and white photos from 1938. My mom's a little baby. The thing is, let me tell you something. It is hard to take pictures of glossy 1938 black and white pictures. It's so difficult not to get any glare in them. Well, I mean, Horsemumbler, I would like to think that the story I told and the way I told it was breezy and entertaining enough that people enjoy the video just for media's sake. But I might be wrong about that. I mean, I think that there's definitely a big audience for like vintagey stuff, like era stuff. And I would like to try to incorporate more of that. This particular photo album didn't really help, but I don't know, nice audio production maybe? Hey, you know what, Super Swoogan? Typology doesn't hate you back. Typology loves you. Typology explains you. You are understood. You are blessed. Goodbye.